Hi, this is Charlotte Curtis, Head of Adult Services with your Livingston Parish Library, and I'm here with Brandi James of the Livingston Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. Hey, as you can see, we're not able to be in the same room anymore. We're having to conduct our sessions through Zoom, and we're doing that out of an abundance of caution. Things have not gone the way that everybody thought they would several months ago with the virus. We all thought when the summer got here that the heat would kill it, and unfortunately that has not been the case. The earlier interviews that you've seen with us were all filmed pretty early in the summer. We filmed them consecutively during a time when the state's numbers were going down and when we were just getting into phase 2. We certainly thought that by this late in July, things would be a little more normal. But thanks to technology, we're still able to continue to offer programs. Unfortunately, we're having to do it remotely. So just like everything else that we've done this summer, this is a virtual session. So Brandi, thank you again for being willing to meet with us through Zoom. And
no problem.
I really want to thank you for the partnership that we've had during the summer. I've learned a ton about how I can prepare for emergencies and how I can recover. And I'm really excited to learn about what you're going to be telling us today, because I understand that today we're talking about hazard mitigation. So
yes,
how, when the worst has happened and you've had a disaster, what can you do to mitigate, or what can you do to lessen the impact of that disaster, right?
Yes. So, yeah, it's once you've had a disaster and you know what the threats are to your area, to your home, hazard mitigation is what comes in and helps you mitigate that threat again for the next storm, or the next flood, stuff like that. So yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, what can you do? I mean, we're here. We're in a place where, unfortunately, we know that we're likely to get hit with a hurricane. And we know that sometimes those hurricanes spawn tornadoes. And forget that. We know that floods happen. So what can we do?
Okay. So as far as hazard mitigation, I just want to explain a little bit like what kind of programs we have. So again, hazard mitigation is something we could do in the community, which would be drainage projects, to make sure the water flows better. So those are some things we do with the municipalities or throughout the parish, at the parish level with federal funding. So, but again, what we're going to talk about today is what's offered to the actual citizens.
Okay, so the parish can mitigate hazards.
Yes.
But that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about what individuals can do to mitigate. Got it.
Yes. Okay. So there are 2 programs right now available to citizens, and it is they're acquisitions, which means we buy out your home. We buy your home from you, and we have to tear it down and we have to return it to green space, and nothing can ever be built on that property again. And so that's one of them. And then the other one is elevations. So you have to get an engineer to come in and say how high you have to elevate and, all that kind of stuff. And FEMA helps pay for your elevation, to get your home to a point where if it floods again, like it did last time, it's not going to actually get in your home.
Okay. So wait, I want to make sure I understand.
Yes.
The first one was what? The one where you tear my house down?
It's called acquisition.
You acquire my house.
Yes.
Got it.
And so both of these range, typically you have a cost share that the homeowner has to take on. And that's the same thing that we have to do when we do any other type of project. We have a cost share. So typically, the typical one is a 75-25 cost share. So the federal government will pay 75% of the cost, and the homeowner needs to be able to pay 25% of the cost.
So if I had a house that cost $100,000,
Mm-hmm.
The federal government would pay 75%.
Yes, ma'am. They would pay
Would pay
you, yes,
$75,000, but I'd be responsible for $25,000?
for 25. Yes. And like I said, that's the starting thing. Everybody's situation is completely different, and there's different factors that you have to work in. So you might have 75-25, you might have 90-10, you know, and there might be other programs out there to help you pay for your side of the cost share.
Because $25 is a lot of money, especially, I mean, the house is going to be torn down. Where am I going to live?
Right, right. There are other organizations out there that might offer like rental assistance and stuff like that. I know that a lot of people that are willing to do the acquisition don't typically owe very much on their home, or they own it outright. So they're still making a profit on selling their home, and then they can find another home. And again,
okay.
Yeah. And this is totally your decision to buy in. We never say we're coming in and we're buying your home and you have no choice. This is you saying, I want you to buy my home. Please help me get out of it, because I can't take the flooding anymore, the cost that it's putting on me, the emotional stuff that it's putting on me to continue to flood.
And it would take care of the loans, that I wouldn't be under that burden.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
I
Yes,
understand now. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So let's focus just on acquisition, if you don't mind.
Please.
First, okay. So again, like I said, acquisition is, we come in and we will purchase your home from you, typically at a 75% value of the home at the time that you're trying to sell it to us. So if you flooded and your home was worth $100,000 before the flood, well, I guarantee you it's not worth $100,000 now. But typically you've gotten money from FEMA to help restore the home, or you've gotten money from your insurance company to help restore the home. So that offsets what you might be losing based on the value going down from the flood. So there's that. And again, you sell it to us. This is like you're selling to a private citizen. When you sign the paperwork, it is no longer yours. You have absolutely no right to this property or home. And so the FEMA requires us to tear the homes down, and we have to return it back to green space. And what green space means is we have to return the property to a natural state. So there can only be grass, trees, stuff like that on it. So even the parish can never put a structure on it. Like, we're not going to go put a building on it, because that is one of the requirements of that hazard mitigation grant, that we cannot do that.
Does that, and how does that help the parish?
That helps the parish because having a structure in the way adds to the flooding possibility, because the water has nowhere to go. So then it's pushed out more. Right. So if you tear down a structure and it starts to flood again, it's not hitting that barrier. So it flows better.
And it can soak into the ground.
Yes, exactly. And so it's to try to help even your neighbors. If you're in a neighborhood and your home gets acquisitioned and torn down, that alleviates the flood pressure off of the other homes in there.
So it wouldn't have to be the entire neighborhood. It could just be one house or two houses.
Right. No. Yeah, exactly. Again, this is you buying into it. You would need to contact our grants department and tell them that you're interested in it, and they can give you information so that you can see if that's exactly what you want to do. So again, there's no pressure from us for you to do it. This is completely your decision.
Well, what about the grants department? You just mentioned that.
Yeah, so the grants department consists of two ladies, I should say. And the one that handles the hazard mitigation grants, her name is Sarah Allen. And she's the grant coordinator for hazard mitigation. And she is housed in the parish president's office.
Oh, okay.
Yes, which is above the health unit
here
in the town of Livingston. Yes, and I can give you her direct line right now if people have questions.
Please.
It's 225-686-4420.
Okay, again, please.
686-4420.
And her name was?
Her name is Sarah Allen.
Got it.
We do have another phone number if you can't reach her at that. It's 225-686-3987. And her email address, which might be the best route to get her because she can check that all the time, is SALLEN@lpgov.com.
Great.
And she is like an expert in this stuff. So, you know, she's going to tell you everybody's situation is different. So if you call and you have questions about your particular property and things work out a certain way for you, and you tell your friend about it, just because something worked out a certain way for you doesn't mean that's how it's going to work out for them. You know, everybody's situation is different. So, you know, you call her and she will guide you through it and tell you all your options and all that kind of stuff. So the other program that is offered is elevation. And so that's the elevation. So this is what most people go for.
Get high.
Yes.
Got it.
Bringing your home up to get it out of the way of the flood. And if you're elevating your home, we do not do fill. Fill actually makes it worse for your neighbors. So we're elevating you up. That water has the capability of flowing under your home. So you're also alleviating that roadblock for the floodwaters.
So you're not making a hill with my house on it. You're making a.
Yeah, they're like beams, or there's, you know, the engineer will say what is best depending on your home.
I've seen those driving around. That's what that is.
Yes. Because I know, like, I talked about possibly elevating my home since I had flooded. And a couple of my neighbors were like, oh, you're going to make us flood worse. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. We do not use fill. FEMA will not allow us to use fill. We're elevating so that we're leaving that space under the home. And you actually can't even brick it off without having holes to allow the water to go through. So, you know, FEMA does not want to have to pay out anymore.
No.
That's the whole point, is to help you so that they don't have to help you in the future. So, you know, there's all those kind of rules. So you don't have to worry about if your neighbor's getting elevated, that they're going to make flooding worse on you. No, they're actually helping you by getting their home elevated.
If they're getting elevated through your program.
Through our program, yes.
But if they're being elevated with fill, I might need to worry.
Yeah, yes. And that would not be through us.
No.
They might be doing that on their own. And so, again, this is going to typically start out at a 75% covered by the federal government, and you take on the 25%. But again, that could change based on your situation. But it won't go you won't have to pay any more than the 25%, has been my experience from what I've seen. So, they typically raise homes we just passed an ordinance last year per FEMA guidance. And it was that BFE means base flood elevation. And so that's how they determine, you know, what flood zone you're in and stuff like that. So they know, like, typically where the flood waters come to during a normal storm. And so that, I guess that kind of, there's some kind of calculation they have that helps determine what that base flood elevation is, BFE. And so I know we all think that BFE stands for something else, because in the beginning I was giggling at what BFE meant. But so the ordinance now says that you have to find out what your BFE is, and FEMA will elevate your home to 1 foot above it to make sure you don't flood. A foot above. Some counties, parishes have an ordinance of 2 foot above BFE. Two, yeah. I mean, and you never know, somebody could go a little higher. Yeah, and base flood elevation does not mean that's where your ground is. You could end up 3 feet in the air. You could end up 6-7 feet up in the air. You know, it just depends on what that BFE is. So they'll either do that, or they'll find out what your let me see, what was that called? Your highest flood of record. So whenever you flooded the worst, they will figure out at what level that water got to, and then they will raise the home to that. And it just depends on which one's higher. Is it the BFE plus 1 foot, or your highest flood of elevation?
So if 2016 was my highest flood of record, but my BFE was lower, plus 1 was lower They would do it up to the 2016 level?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's it.
Okay,
Yes. So typically it's BFE +1, but if you have a flood higher than that, they will go to that higher number. Yes.
got it. So if you had one of those 1,000-year floods that we seem to have, what, every
Yes.
5 years,
Right.
you're good. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right.
And so I also wanted to explain how you go about the process. As of right now, I don't know that there are any grant funding available. Like, we're not in an application process at this very moment, but it's constantly coming through. So we just finished submitting some stuff a while back, but now we're just waiting for the next one. But in the meantime, that should not stop you from contacting Sarah, because she has paperwork that's preliminary that you can fill out, and she keeps all of that in a file. So as soon as more grant money comes, then she starts calling everybody who she already has paperwork on.
So when
to
you
say-
say the next one, you're not referring to, God forbid, a flood?
No,
or
the
tornado?
next grant opportunity.
Next grant opportunities. Okay.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I
Oh.
mean, and granted, sometimes, or I should say most of the time, those grant opportunities come after a disaster, but they don't come immediately after, and they keep, there might be several installments of funding from that disaster that they offer. So, so yeah, and it's ongoing. You never know when funding's going to become available, so it's really good to get your paperwork in now. Like I said, I've turned in my paperwork, but of course I've only flooded once, so everybody else who's flooded more absolutely needs to go before me. You know what I'm saying? So,
So that matters.
Yes, because there's stuff called repetitive loss, severe repetitive loss, all that factors in. And the different grants have different requirements. Like, some will say you don't have to be repetitive loss, but a lot of them do, so, and Sarah can speak more on that than I can. She's the expert. I actually tried to get her to come talk about this, but she's swamped with the stuff she's working now for the stuff she's working now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. She didn't want to come in and do a Zoom meeting.
No, probably not.
Thank you for presenting the information. I appreciate.
Oh, no problem. No problem. And again, I wanted to make sure that everybody knew, just filling out the preliminary paperwork does not lock you in. You have plenty of time to make up your mind.
So you can still, if I've decided, forget it, I can't stand it anymore, I'm going with acquisition.
Yes.
And I could change my mind.
Yes. Again, it's just like selling a home. Up to the point where you sign the actual paperwork, selling your home to somebody, you can change your mind. So it's the same way here. And so
if you do that when selling a home, though, there's earnest money that you've put up that you would.
I don't think that we have that. I've never seen that.
Okay.
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, good. That's
yeah, because the federal government is not in the business of forcing you to give us your home, sort of thing, or elevate your home. The purpose of this is to help you do what you want, what you feel is needed to be done, and that kind of thing. So you have up to that point.
Have a lot of people in the parish taken advantage of either of those programs?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Like I said, Sarah's very busy, very busy. I also wanted to point out that this is not a quick fix.
What do you mean?
You could apply, and it could be a year out before the grant funding's even available, before we submit the application. Some people, they might get theirs done in a year and a half, but for the majority, it might be 2 years, 3 years. It's a process, because again, there's checks and balances, and so it's got to go through all these reviews before you actually start breaking ground.
So that's why you were saying that people should go on and get the paperwork filled out, and then
yes, because then you're ahead of the curve. Yes.
You've pre-registered, and
yes, ma'am.
And a fact.
Yeah, and she will always, I've seen her always keep people's paperwork, and just because they might not be interested in it when this particular grant funding comes through, something might happen again, and then at that point they're fed up and go, no, I should have done it before. Let's do it now. So yeah, she doesn't get rid of paperwork. And again, when grant funding comes up, she contacts everybody who she has paperwork on to say, hey, are you still interested?
And again, her name was?
Her name is Sarah Allen, and she could be reached at 225-686-3986. 225-3987 or 225-686-4420, or at her email address, which is sallen, so SALLEN, at lpgov.com.
lpgov.com.
Yes, and please call her with any questions you have, because again, like I said, just because your neighbor did it, it's not going to be the same for you.
No,
It could be
and
completely
that makes
different.
sense. That makes
Yes.
perfect sense.
Yes, and she is the person that knows how to guide you through this and get you the answers to know how it's going to work for you. So,
Excellent.
yes.
Wow. Man, this was a lot to get into a short period of time.
Yes, yes. It is a lot.
It is. It is.
Yeah, and
Well,
I barely touched the surface of the details for this kind of stuff. So,
good. Does she, do you all ever do informational sessions where she presents all of this material to people, or is it just on a one-by-one basis?
typically it's a one-on-one basis. She may do stuff. Well, she does do outreach to the public. I know that in the past, once something's come up, like they've done a push for us, please contact everybody who's severe repetitive loss or repetitive loss, like send mail outs. And she might hold a meeting. I'm not sure. Like I said, she's the one that handles all of that.
So
But I do
severe
know.
repetitive loss is my house floods every spring.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So FEMA has a threshold to determine whether you're severe repetitive loss or just repetitive loss. They have different numbers for that to tell you which one you fall into. But again, there are some that you flooded once and you don't want it to ever happen again. It just depends on what the requirements are on that grant at that time. So.
Yeah, that was not fun.
No, it was
Okay.
not.
Well, thank you so much, not only for what you've just shared with us today, but for everything that you've shared with us all through the summer.
Yeah.
And again,
you.
I really appreciate your flexibility in appearing via Zoom. So
Yeah, no problem.
this was Charlotte Curtis, Head of Adult Services with your Livingston Parish Library, and Brandi James, my friend and colleague with the Livingston Office for Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness. Thanks so much for joining us today. Goodbye.
Yes, thank you.